Hello, and thanks for joining Procurement Innovation, brought to you by GoProcure. I'm your host, Raj Verma, and this is episode 4 of the 2021 Procurement Innovation Station. And I can tell you, I am very excited about our next guest, somebody I've known for many, even though she's not aging and I am, who is a domain expert in the procurement and diversity space. Spent many years at Coca-Cola, now has her own strategic thought leadership firm, IW Consulting. Ingrid Watkins. How you doing today, Ingrid?
Well, hello, doing well. It's beautiful weather in Atlanta, and we're feeling great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. This is long overdue. I mean, I don't know. I know you've been so busy with all the value you're always providing out there. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Not a problem. Thank you.
So Ingrid, I know, you've come somebody who's had so much experience, and you were on the cusp of some of the first companies that really got deep in the diversity space. And now, you've seen it mature. Where are we as a culture, as you would think, from supplier diversity from when you first got in? What's going the right way, and what still needs some kick?
Well, the supplier diversity, and I call it an industry. It really is an industry all of its own. It goes through peaks and valleys like many other industries. I think we can do very well at times, and sometimes it's competing opportunities or competing issues within corporates, and we kind of fall off from our focus. One of the things I think that we're doing really, really well is corporates are finally, paying attention to the needs of diverse suppliers. So I think the new climate, the new social climate, we're finally getting the attention that we need from corporate leaders.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear. I know that as someone, I think you're also being very mindful of our audience.
Oh, we're just getting started.
Yeah. So, because I know, and for the audience that's listening, Ingrid was very instrumental at Coca-Cola, and I'm sure if some of those people who are local Atlantans in Georgia remember, there was a time back in the 80s and 90s that people wanted Coke to be more aggressive. And I can tell you, first, as somebody who worked in corporate, as well as somebody who's been a diversity leader, Ingrid really pushed to help get the spend with the strategic view within the organization. Do you see that, you don't have to mention any companies by names, but are you seeing that people are building their organizations the same way as you were a part of back at Coke?
No, things change. I think one of the things we're seeing, and I don't know if I could consider this a hindrance or an advantage, is, supplier diversity is being married with other initiatives like DEI. Sometimes it's married with community. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I'm real clear that supplier diversity is a procurement function. And sometimes when you marry it with these other initiatives, you kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I think anytime that you're not at the table where purchasing decisions are being made, where vendor selections are being made in procurement, you're missing out on opportunities. So there's a lot of, organizational things I think we need to consider about where supplier diversity should be housed to be more effective in these corporate environments. One of the things I always say when I'm training and talking with my supplier diversity colleagues, we're seeing some trends. There are a lot of newbies in the space, and some of the more mature practitioners are rolling out of their roles. They're retiring and, rolling off into the sunset to live beautiful lives. And I think one of the things we're seeing is, there's not adequate training in place for the newbies. They come on board from other areas of the company, and they're in these roles, and there's just no training that's readily available for newbies. So I think proper training is one of the challenges that we're seeing in this space. And to that fact, what we did was we partnered with the University of Florida to create a supplier diversity leadership certificate program. We saw the gap and we wanted to do something to address it. So my partners and I, we created a 2-day curriculum program. We facilitate it. We give it our most practical knowledge of what we know about best in class programs, and we bring what we know to work, and what we know that doesn't work, and we train these newbies how to do their jobs.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you offer something like that. And secondly, I don't know if you knew, but I went to Florida grad school. But I think with all the people from Atlanta listening, they're probably going to be yelling at both of us. Why didn't we do this with UGA Terry School of Business?
Well, hey, tell them to give us a call. We're open to
Yeah, I think
to
we'll have to
expanding the
facilitate.
program.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to facilitate that. So, as you mentioned training, but do you think that when they join an organization, their leadership is seeing that, hey, you get a chance to be an entrepreneur? And I love how you put it. You need to be tied to procurement. But is this just a stepping stone to another role, or how do we get the visibility that we need for those new diversity leaders?
Yeah, you'll see it all. I mean, the competing pressures in these corporate environments, sometimes you get the lift and shift, I've talked to so many different practitioners. They'll say, I was an analyst over here and I got lifted and shifted and now I'm in supplier diversity. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. But I do think wherever you come from within the organization, you really need to invest some time in learning the craft. And it really is a special, area that should not be taken lightly. I mean, you have the opportunity to affect people's lives, to affect diverse communities and families. So this is a role that you really should invest time to learn to do it well.
No, that's absolutely correct. And, I know the very beginning you started that, it needs to be part of purchasing and sometimes getting pulled into DEI or other organizations. Is that a lack of understanding at the C-suite, or why is that occurring then? Do you think that they don't have it in the right location?
I think there are many different reasons. It could be resource restraints. I think one of the things that we're seeing is, combining roles. You see DEI and sustainability and supplier diversity. And I go, whoa, how can you possibly
Oh my goodness.
roll all that as 3, 4 jobs into one role? And I think what practitioners have to do is push back. I mean, I work with clients and I'm telling them how to communicate with their leadership and say, there is no way I could be a strategic procurement sourcing person, supplier diversity person, and sustainability person, because I'm only one person. So you really have to, have the communication skills. You have to make the business case, and you have to, sometimes push back.
No, that's a very good point. Where
Mhm.
do you think diversity fits? Now a lot of companies are, their big focus is innovation through their own organization, supplier innovation or incubation. How does diversity fit in well there? What have you seen, and what are some good best practices?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and it's not just me, there's studies that have been done, research that has been done that proves that diverse suppliers bring the creativity and the innovation. And I think one of the things that companies can do to connect to these firms is, supplier development. I mean, working on very capable and viable diverse suppliers, working on their capability and capacity, and creating suppliers that that are a good fit with um, your supply chain and your internal business structure. I think investing in those supplier development programs is just a win-win. I mean, we already know that diverse suppliers, bring the innovation and creativity. It's a matter of training them and providing them with tools to be a good fit with your organization, and you do that through a robust supplier development program.
Now we know that some companies have taken this to the next level, and for full transparency, we can even mention them here. Capital One has their program. I know Accenture had a program, and then the large organizations and MSDC and some of them put some things on. Do you feel that you almost need to have your own diverse supplier development program, even that next step that is even outside of your core supplier development within an organization?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that is the way to build your army of viable, diverse suppliers is to train them in the way that you need them to operate. So yes, supplier. I can't speak enough about the effectiveness of supplier development program.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I know that and I know you're very humble about this, but can you kind of give us a lens? You've been now out on your own and been very successful. What are some of the key things that if let's say I brought you on to a Fortune 500 company and you were telling them, you don't have to give away your secret sauce, but if you're telling them what are some things that they should do from a supplier development program?
I think you want to look at first, and we do have a proprietary methodology that we use. But I think you need to look first at your current supply chain. Look at those diverse suppliers you're already doing business with. Is there an opportunity to grow their capability within your supply chain? If they're already tried and tested and they're performing well, what else can they do for us? How can we expand their capabilities so that they can become a bigger supplier for us? So that's one of the first things you look at. Um, there's
Now,
some other things.
no, I don't want you to give your secret sauce. I think that's a good point. I was in a conversation and in a panel, and then had the opportunity of hearing some people we know well, Shelley Stewart and Mr. Robinson speak. And one of the comments that came up was that a number of diverse suppliers, as they try to grow, are dealing with such egregious pay terms, or they're dealing with you know high insurance rates. I know that you prided yourself to fight for the diversity leader, but why in one side is corporate telling us, hey, we got to increase our diversity spend, we have to do the right thing, but they put such draconian things on there? I mean, it's such a
Yeah,
challenge.
that's a good question. And when we create supplier diversity strategic plans and programs for our clients, we address that 90-day payment term. As a supplier diversity practitioner, your job is to advocate for small and diverse firms. So, what I tell my clients is okay, you might have, let's say, 50 diverse firms in your supply chain. These are new startups. So, they might have 50 diverse firms. It can be very impactful for these small and diverse businesses to wait 90 days for payment. But it is not impactful for these corporations to, pay within 30 days. So you have to look at weighing who's going to be the most impactful. And then there's a thing called goodwill. You want to be a good, supplier partner, whether you're the corporate or the MBE. So let's try to make it comfortable for everybody. It's not going to hurt you to pay this small and diverse firm in 90 days. You don't have 400 diverse suppliers that's going to be impactful to your financial plan. Go ahead and pay these diverse suppliers, and that's the supplier diversity practitioner's role to advocate to make it comfortable for diverse suppliers to do business with these corporations.
Very good point, and I appreciate you saying that, because we need, as currently a diverse vendor, we need the support of our key champions in there to help us with those fiduciary risks that are there.
Mm-hmm.
As you're looking at some of the programs that you've seen now from this side, um, what are, and you don't have to mention any names, what are some things that are people are doing right, and some are things that you're still, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this? You don't have to mention any company names, but I'm just curious if you're open with sharing.
Well, I'm okay to mention a name. There is one company that I use in my training. I really admire this. It's the MGM Mirage and their policy about supplier diversity to their primes. No supplier does business with that brand unless you agree to subcontracting with minority suppliers. I absolutely think that is very proactive, and that is the way that you want to position your supplier diversity program, to be very proactive. I mean, I tell people all the time, second tier is a way to um, create economic growth in diverse business communities. So don't leave money on the table. Create a very robust second tier program. Do things like MGM Mirage and say you have to engage diverse suppliers if you want to do business with our brand. I think that's great.
That is a great shout out there. And then on the opposite side, let's use the term opportunity improvement. What are you seeing that some of our colleagues are still doing? You don't have to, obviously don't want to mention any names, but
Yeah.
what is
Yeah. Well,
frustrating you these days?
you know what? I don't experience this as much as some other diverse suppliers. We do a Thursday night supplier diversity think tank, and sometimes we have diverse suppliers come sit in on the session, and they will, voice their concerns. And one of the things they say now more than ever, you can't get supplier diversity practitioners on the phone. You can't engage them because we're not having the in-face conferences anymore. So it's very hard to make those connections to be able to present your capabilities and to be able to, get connected with these opportunities. So I don't know what the answer is. I think maybe some supply diversity practitioners need to make sure that they keep office hours and they answer their phones even when they're working from home and out of the office.
That's a very, that is
I
very
mean,
astute point, right?
accessibility is key to making those connections. So we have to make ourselves accessible to the diverse suppliers. Things
Has
didn't stop because of COVID. They were just, we're doing it from home. But you should still be doing your job and picking up the phone.
No, that's very true. And I think the reality is that people now are just working off their cell phones. They're not even looking at their office phone, right? So if your cell phone and you don't know that number, you may not be picking up. So where does the NMSDC and WeBank and USPAC and have they filled the gap? I mean, we're in a pandemic. I mean, once again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but are they fulfilling their role and responsibility to their constituency and where we're at right now?
Well, I think it's best they can. I mean, they pivoted from the in-face conferences, and a lot of them are doing the virtual conference, which is certainly not my preference.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't think I've sat in on a few. I don't think they work very well, but I think under the circumstances, these organizations are doing the best they can to keep business as usual in a very virtual world. We use what we have. No one, foresaw this happening, so we're doing the best we can to make these pivots.
The level of finding a little bit of justice just recently. How do we make sure that when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, that those communities that are most disadvantaged and have the need the greatest help are actually being positively impacted? Because it's one thing to say, yes, I have $50 million or $100 million diverse spend, but if it's not adding value to the community, is it really moving the needle?
Yeah. What I'd really like to see is a refocus in supplier diversity on, the African American business community. If the history of supplier diversity, it really was, and that's not to, say others can't be included, but I would really like to see a refocus. The history of supplier diversity, it really was created in large part to support the Black community through business development and job creation. And somehow over the years, there's just been a shift. I mean, I think African American businesses have been, in some ways disenfranchised. We're getting a smaller piece of the pie, of the corporate pie. And that, it shows in the way our communities are not developing as fast as some other communities. So I really think there should be we're seeing some of it. We're seeing some of it, particularly in the D&I space. But I think supplier diversity also need to refocus. It's one thing to say we have a supplier diversity program and you're using, all women, or all Indian, or in your program. But I think we need to start slicing and dicing that pie and looking at some metrics around who we're doing business with, and make sure we're really inclusive of all the diverse affinities, including specifically African American businesses.
Yeah, you're being too nice. You and I have talked offline on this. That I think it's gone too far the other pendulum. It started with our friend who's been fighting for this forever, Harriet Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally think that because there has to be a metric that measures the success on those disadvantaged communities
Mm-hmm.
wherever they may be. Like if we're both from Atlanta, so those places, whether, I don't want to pick on anyone, but you know what I'm talking about. It's one thing if I choose a diverse vendor that happens to be sitting here in East Cobb or Alpharetta and give them a huge contract and they're just hiring people who already live here. How is that really impacting the value of the marketplace or where we live? And I
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up outside of Detroit, and I know that where there's areas that are very depressed, and if you're not bringing those people to the table, then what is the reason for your program to begin with? So
Exactly.
I'm
Well,
saying,
that is a direct link to lack of education. I mean, some supplier diversity practitioners just think that, I have a diverse supplier, I've checked that box, I've done my job. And they don't give consideration to, the broader picture. How am I affecting economic development in diverse communities? Lots of times that answer is you're not. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but you have to be astute enough in the work that we're doing to take a look at what you're doing and make those changes.
you and I could do a whole show on this.
Absolutely.
So as the market has changed a little bit the last couple of years, so what are you, if I give you a chance to kind of talk about yourself, so others, I know a number of chief procurement officers and heads of indirect listen to the show. Should they know about your firm, and what you could do immediately for them to help them get value?
Yeah. Well, first, I tell all of my clients I bring my authentic self to the work that I do, just as I did in corporate. So, if you hire me and you hire my firm, we're going to do the work. We're going to put together exceptional strategy. It's going to be customized. We do not do any out of the box, jack in the box, any of that stuff. When we sign on with the client, we start with a blank computer screen. We build each strategy based on knowledge and insights that we collect from the client, from the priorities of leadership. So we build very customized, company centric strategic plans for supplier diversity.
Like that. And then once again, I don't want to give a secret sauce, but more at a general, I get asked this question all the time. What are the right metrics that a company should have? I know we know the obvious one on spend. What are the other ones that they should be looking at in programs?
Yeah, I think we have to go back to basics. Years ago, under Johnny Booker, we didn't just look at spend. We looked at adding new diverse suppliers, whether it was over a quarter. What new diverse suppliers are we adding at the end of the year? If you only have one or two, is that your measure of success? So you have to look at spend, diverse suppliers you're adding to the supply chain, and in some industries where it's very difficult. I have some clients, it's very difficult to, bring in diverse suppliers if it's some type of um, niche market. So we're looking at how else can we support the diverse business community. And I use my own experience. I remember when we were pivoting from in-class training, face-to-face training, to virtual training. There were expenses in buying those e-tools. So I tell my clients sometimes it's about setting up a grant so that diverse suppliers can have that capital to pivot into the new spaces that they need to be in. Sometimes it's having grants for education, leadership development. So it's not always about spend when you're talking about supporting diverse suppliers to be more competitive and be the best that they can be.
No, I love that you're mentioning that because, one thing I always see is that these independent groups, whether it's NMSDC or one of the universities, whether it's Rutgers or Dartmouth, they have these programs where they're teaching scalability. It's all theoretical. But to your point, if I'm a corporate and I have a supplier and I know they're good but I see that they need help, whether cutting costs or uh, maybe even helping them source better things for themselves to be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know they got to get product.
Right.
We should never be scared of doing that. I think
Right.
sometimes large companies, they get the supplier in, they're very excited, and then 90 days they become a commodity, right? They don't continue to look at how, hey, you just brought an innovative partner in.
Yeah.
Why not continue to leverage that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think starting my business, one of the things we have customized training, intellectual property that we need to protect. So a large part of our operating budget the first couple of years was really legal fees. So yeah, it would have been great to have a corporate client support. With a grant to support those expenses. So there's a number of creative ways and innovative ways that we can support diverse businesses. To create the kind of capacity and capabilities that we need in these corporate environments. Just need to put your thinking caps on and open your purse and write the checks.
There you go. You guys heard it. Open your pocketbooks and write the
Mm-hmm.
checks.
Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward 20 years. Where do you think supplier diversity, what needs to happen so that in 20 years we're having this conversation that we said it's been more successful, it's met that it's helped address the changing landscape of the country? What needs to happen, and what do you see as that next steps?
Oh boy, I shudder to think that in 20 years we'll still be here. I'm hoping in 20 years we
Oh,
won't we won't need supplier diversity. Everyone will be treated equally and fairly and given a fair play at opportunity. Geez, I mean, it's kind of depressing to think that we might be doing this, even though it started back in the 50s. We're still having the conversation. So I don't know. I think as corporates continue to invest and organizations continue to invest in diverse business, you're going to see larger scale. You're going to see more innovation, more technology. But yeah, it's going to take an investment, and it's going to take real robust interest from corporates to come up with the solutions and to the challenges of diverse suppliers.
I'm in one way, I'm glad you didn't give the cheery answer because that's the easy answer. But we both know that it's been a constant struggle, and it'd be great to sit here and say that in 20 years, when there's no majority in the country, that we have no majority in suppliers. But you and I both know that's a larger hurdle because it's a movement of
Yes.
funds. But I really appreciate you saying that. And for those people who might be joining late, this is I'm on with Ingrid Watkins, one of the top thought leaders in the diversity space, many years in corporate America at Coca-Cola, now the principal of IW Consulting Group. So we're just talking about the future of diversity and how we need you all to play a strong role, whether you're in the finance organization, whether you're in procurement, whether you are, in one of the lines of business, but you have a very active role to play. So we really need that help. Uh, you know, One of the things that you mentioned also about DEI and the social justice component, we always talk about this from a corporate standpoint, but how can I almost think that on the nonprofit side, the education side, and leveraging DEI, how do we break open those doors, because they might even be further behind than the corporate side?
Yeah, it's true. Well, post, the George Floyd murder, corporate had this, diversity awakening, and everyone hired these DEI leaders, and, CEOs made the commitments to do better. So, I mean, all we have to do, if the initiatives they put in place around DEI, just sit and wait and see if it works. I mean, we don't know. This is also new. We don't know how it's going to shape up 3 to 5 years from now. but I'm hoping that these initiatives are authentic and that the DEI professionals will do the work. And when we look at the corporate data, 3 to 5 years from now, we'll see a very different picture.
It's great to give us some positive thoughts there. So, as I know, we're coming on the bottom half of the hour. Great, robust conversation. We'll definitely have to do this again. What are some last thoughts that you would have for your procurement peers that are listening right now on how they can actively improve their program, and any thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think you have to keep the economic development piece top of mind. I tell when I'm presenting to potential clients, I said, if all of your diverse consumers and customers go away, how would that impact your organization? If it's significant, if the answer is significant, then you should be investing in a supplier diversity program. I don't think any industry, whether you're in consumer goods, manufacturing, whatever the industry, you are impacted directly or indirectly by diverse consumer communities. It's as simple as, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You're, gaining revenue from diverse communities, then you should be supporting these communities with contracting. It's a full circle. Lots of times, particularly in consumer brands, you have the opportunity to support diverse communities, which in some ways you can actually grow your own bottom line. These consumers who now have, jobs, they have thriving businesses, they can become consumers of your brands. I don't know any industry that can do well in an economically depressed environment where businesses aren't thriving, people don't have jobs. It impacts your business. You should be doing everything you possibly can to grow the local economies that you serve so that your business can benefit in the long run. It's as simple as that.
Wow. That was a fantastic statement, almost like a missive. And so I think, we want to believe that everybody's doing things for the right reason. But I think Ingrid just laid it out for, all you folks that are, at Fortune 5s and are looking at revenue. Your future customer base should be emulated by your supply base, and I couldn't said it better. There's just no way. I'm glad, Ingrid, you're sharing that, because that's the reality of the future in this country for the next 20 years.
Yeah,
that's
sure it is. Mm-hmm.
So, Ingrid, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
You're so very welcome. This was a lot of fun. I'm just so glad it's not video.
Oh, please. Yeah, I think everybody happy to see you. Me, I think that'd be a different thing. I still got probably about a 12-week program before I can get on a video. But but once again, Ingrid, thank you so much for joining. And
you're so welcome. So welcome.
Connect in the future. So that ends episode 4 of Procurement Innovation. We've, quite honestly, this is probably the most important topic we will have this year. So for those people that are out there that are kicking off their programs, or the programs are stale, or they're trying to figure out ways to innovate, please look up IW Consulting Group, led by Ingrid Watkins, who's the principal, over 20 years corporate experience, tremendous amount of domain experience, and she'll help you along your way. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you next week on Procurement Innovation, brought to you by GoProcure. Thank you.